Ryan's office revenge. He raised his champagne glass in my direction like he was doing me some kind of favor, instead of stabbing me in the back. I want to recognize Mac Sullivan for his outstanding work stabilizing our operations this year, Richard Hartwell announced, standing beneath those massive screens showing our turnaround numbers in bright gold. His efforts have been crucial in bringing Hartwell Manufacturing back from the brink. The room full of executives and board members gave polite applause. You know the kind. Measured, professional, the sort of clapping that happens when people know there's a catch coming. Richard's smile got wider as he turned toward the cameras at the back of the room. But as we move into our next phase of aggressive expansion, we need leadership that understands the digital transformation vision I've been building toward, which is why I'm proud to announce that my son Bryce Hartwell will be stepping into the role of Chief Operations Officer, effective immediately. My role, my title. The position he'd promised was mine if I delivered results. The applause got louder this time. Bryce walked onto the little stage they'd set up, his custom suit probably costing more than most of our floor workers made in 3 months. He shook his father's hand for just the right amount of time while photographers snapped away. Perfect expression. Humble, determined, ready to serve. I stood near the back with the people who actually understood how this place worked. Plant managers who could recite production schedules from memory. Maintenance supervisors who knew which machines would break down before they did. Safety coordinators who'd spent 16 months learning my systems because their old processes were held together with duct tape and prayers. Behind Richard, those screens cycled through slide after slide. Crisis to recovery. A 16-month transformation. Revenue up 23%. Production efficiency improved 31%. Safety incidents down 67%. Every single number on those screens came from systems I'd built, processes I'd designed, improvements I'd fought to implement, while half the executive team told me I was wasting time on outdated approaches. My name wasn't mentioned once. I'm Mac Sullivan. I'm 58 years old, and until 3 days ago, I was the guy you called at Hartwell Manufacturing when you needed the impossible fixed before the quarterly earnings call. Let me tell you how a company logo golf ball set worth $15 became the most expensive gift in corporate history. Hartwell Manufacturing was a mid-sized operation, 35 facilities across 8 states, making heavy machinery components for automotive and construction. Not flashy, not cutting edge, but solid enough that when we stumbled, our clients noticed and our creditors started making calls. The company had been family-owned since Richard's father started it in 1987, building hydraulic cylinders for farm equipment. Good business, steady growth, until Richard took it public in 2015 and started acquiring competitors. Each acquisition brought new facilities, new processes, new headaches. When I arrived 16 months ago, Hartwell was bleeding out from multiple wounds. The COVID supply chain collapse had triggered a cascade of failures. 3 major automotive clients had canceled contracts worth $18 million annually. Our biggest construction equipment customer had switched to a Chinese supplier offering 30% lower prices. On paper, everything looked manageable. Revenue was down, but not catastrophic. The balance sheet showed assets that could cover liabilities if you squinted right. In practice, we were dying from 1,000 small cuts. Production schedules were constantly behind because materials arrived late or wrong. The procurement system was so fragmented that our Tennessee plant was buying steel rod at $2,100 per ton, while our Ohio facility got the same grade for $1,650 from a different supplier. Quality control was catching defects after products shipped, leading to expensive recalls that destroyed client relationships. 3 facilities had serious OSHA violations pending: fall protection failures, inadequate lockout procedures, chemical storage violations. The union was talking strike over forced overtime and unsafe working conditions. Worker compensation claims had tripled in 18 months. Our logistics system was pure chaos. Shipments regularly got sent to wrong facilities or sat on loading docks for days because tracking systems didn't communicate. I found one $85,000 hydraulic press that had been shipped between facilities 4 times because nobody knew where it was supposed to go. But the real killer was maintenance. Critical equipment was breaking down mid-production run, creating defects, delays, safety hazards. The maintenance scheduling system was a joke. Excel spreadsheets that nobody updated, verbal promises that got forgotten, reactive fixes that cost 3 times what preventive work would have run. I got called in through a connection at the bank. They needed someone with manufacturing turnaround experience, and my track record spoke for itself. 28 years in industrial operations, starting as a machine operator after 6 years in the Army, working my way up through maintenance, production planning, facility management, eventually running operations for a $120 million automotive supplier before that company got acquired and I got restructured out. The 30-minute interview in Richard's office was refreshingly direct. He showed me the quarterly report, loss margins, client churn, delayed projects. The final page showed cash flow projections. We'd be in the red within 4 months. "I need someone who can stabilize operations and get us profitable again," he said. "Full authority to make necessary changes." "Authority or responsibility?" I asked. He smiled. "What's the difference? Authority means I can make decisions without getting second-guessed by every department head who thinks their area is special. Responsibility means I get blamed when systems fail, but don't get power to fix them." "You'll have authority," he said. "Within reasonable parameters." That phrase should have sent me running, but after 28 years in manufacturing, I'd seen enough failing operations to know the warning signs and the opportunities. I took the job with one condition: I wouldn't come in as a standard employee. After getting burned at 2 previous companies where I'd built critical systems only to watch executives take credit and eliminate my role once things stabilized, I'd learned to protect myself. When Richard hired me, I agreed to join his organizational chart as head of operations strategy, but the actual work would be delivered through my consulting firm, Sullivan Industrial Systems. We drafted a clear contract. I'd provide operational improvements and system design. They'd get exclusive use of my methodologies, but I retained ownership of vendor relationships and technical specifications. The contract had language buried in Appendix C that legal reviewed, but nobody else read carefully. In event that client materially alters operational authority of designated technical lead without prior written agreement, consultant may transition engagement to restricted access mode at sole discretion. Richard's lawyer approved it. He signed it. Then, like most contracts, it disappeared into filing cabinets where nobody thought about it again. First 6 weeks, I didn't change anything. I watched. I visited every facility, sat in production meetings, walked floors at 5 a.m. to see how shift changes actually happened versus how schedules said they happened. I talked to machine operators, maintenance techs, floor supervisors, the people who actually touched the work. At the Ohio Distribution Center, I discovered they were logging incoming materials in 3 different systems that didn't communicate. The SAP system showed official inventory, the warehouse management software tracked physical locations, and the quality control database recorded inspection results. None of them agreed. The warehouse manager, a 20-year veteran named Pete Anderson, kept his own Excel spreadsheet because the official count was always wrong. "System says we got 200 units of hydraulic seals last Tuesday," Pete told me, pulling up his screen. "QC database shows 180 passed inspection. Warehouse software says 195 are in location B47. My sheet says 178, because 22 got damaged in shipping, but nobody updated the other systems. At the Tennessee manufacturing plant, the production scheduler had built her own Access database to track machine maintenance because the corporate CMMS system didn't account for setup time, changeover delays, or the fact that Line 3's hydraulic press needed 2 hours of warm-up every Monday morning. "Official schedule says we can run 47 units per shift on that line," she explained, showing me her handwritten notes. "Reality is 41 on a good day, 38 if we had weekend downtime, 32 if Gary's not here, because he's the only one who knows the temperamental feed mechanism." Everyone was working incredibly hard. They were just working in chaos. I mapped everything. Every data flow, every approval process, every workaround that existed because official processes didn't work. What I found was this. Hartwell didn't need better people. It needed a functioning nervous system. The company had grown through acquisitions over 15 years. Each facility brought its own ERP system, its own vendors, its own procedures. Instead of integrating them properly, corporate had just layered new reporting requirements on top. The result was organizational scar tissue, rigid, fragmented, and painful to work with. I knew better than to rip everything out at once. Companies don't survive big bang transformations. I started with what I knew worked. Lean manufacturing principles, predictive maintenance protocols, integrated vendor management. The breakthrough came when I convinced Richard to let me pilot a vendor consolidation program. We were buying identical components from different suppliers at wildly different prices. Our Memphis facility was purchasing grade 316 stainless steel bolts for $4.20 per unit, while Atlanta bought the same specification for $2.85 from a supplier 200 miles closer. I spent 3 weeks mapping our entire supply chain. We had relationships with 847 different vendors across all facilities. Nearly 40% were selling us identical or functionally equivalent products. The purchasing was completely decentralized. Each plant manager negotiated their own deals, often with whoever had called that week offering a discount. I consolidated 847 vendors down to 312, negotiating master agreements that leveraged our total volume. The steel supplier alone. We went from 23 different sources to 4 regional distributors with guaranteed pricing and delivery schedules. Annual savings, $420,000. But the real win was reliability. When you're buying from 23 different steel suppliers, 3 or 4 are always increasing. Delivery problems. Quality issues or payment disputes. Consolidate to 4 strategic partners who understand they're critical to your operation, and suddenly materials show up when promised. The maintenance transformation took longer, but had bigger impact. I implemented a predictive maintenance system based on vibration analysis, thermal imaging, and oil testing. Instead of waiting for equipment to break down, we started catching problems 2 to 4 weeks early. The hydraulic press at Tennessee that was causing production delays every Monday? Thermal imaging showed the warming system was failing gradually. $3,200 repair during scheduled downtime instead of $18,000 emergency replacement during production run. Plus, no more lost shifts waiting for equipment to come online. Quality improvements followed naturally. Most defects weren't caused by operator error or material problems. They came from equipment operating outside specification. When machines run hot, tolerances drift. When hydraulic pressure fluctuates, cuts aren't clean. When conveyor speeds vary, timing gets disrupted. Fix the underlying mechanical issues, and quality improves automatically. Customer complaints dropped 43% in the first 8 months. Not because we implemented new inspection procedures, but because we stopped creating defects in the first place. Worker morale improved too, though that wasn't my primary focus. When equipment runs reliably, jobs are less stressful. When production schedules are achievable, overtime becomes occasional rather than mandatory. When safety systems work properly, people go home healthy every day. The union organizer who'd been talking strike told me 6 months into the implementation, "Don't know what you changed, but whatever it was, keep doing it. Guys aren't complaining about working here anymore." Financial impact showed up gradually, then all at once. First quarter after vendor consolidation, operating margin improved 3.8%. Second quarter, another 4.1%, as maintenance costs dropped and equipment reliability improved. Third quarter, 6.2% improvement as quality costs disappeared and customer satisfaction generated repeat orders. By month 12, we weren't just profitable. We were solidly in the black with improving trajectory and a reputation for reliable delivery that was bringing new business. Richard called a celebration in the executive conference room when the 12-month numbers came in. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it," he said, raising a glass of champagne. "You've bought us breathing room." "Breathing room isn't the same as being healthy," I replied. "You still have structural issues, technology debt from all those acquisitions, facility consolidation opportunities you haven't explored." "One miracle at a time," he said with that politician's smile. It wasn't a miracle. It was work. Methodical, disciplined work that most executives don't have patience for because it doesn't make headlines or impress investors at quarterly calls. But I didn't argue. Results spoke for themselves. As the numbers improved, so did my visibility within the company. Plant managers started copying me on decision emails. The CFO, Jordan Walsh, began using my operational dashboards in board presentations. Directors who'd barely acknowledged me 6 months earlier were asking my input on strategic decisions. At one executive meeting, board member Linda Martinez asked the question I'd been waiting for. "What happens if Mac leaves? How do we protect this operational knowledge?" Richard laughed confidently. "We'll integrate what he's built into our core infrastructure. Make it permanent." "It is permanent," I said quietly. "Just not yours." A few people glanced at me, but nobody asked what I meant. They didn't understand that I hadn't just improved their operations. I'd built an ecosystem of relationships and dependencies that extended far beyond what appeared on any organizational chart. The vendor contracts I'd negotiated weren't with Hartwell Manufacturing. They were with Sullivan Industrial Systems, with Hartwell listed as the designated client. The predictive maintenance protocols required ongoing certification that only I was qualified to provide. The safety compliance systems were registered under my consulting firm's credentials. All legal, all contracted, all invisible until someone tried to operate without me. But I didn't explain that. Let them think what they wanted to think. The anniversary celebration was Richard's idea. Big ballroom at the downtown Marriott, executives, regional directors, local media. A chance to show the turnaround story, position himself for whatever political or business opportunities he was eyeing. I should have seen it coming when he started talking about next phases and digital transformation and fresh leadership perspectives. But honestly, after 16 months of 60-hour weeks and constant problem-solving, I thought I'd earned some job security. The evening started well enough. Cocktails, networking, everyone congratulating each other on the recovery. The presentation was professional. Slides showing the transformation metrics, revenue growth, operational improvements. My work displayed in charts and graphs that made it all look inevitable. Then came Richard's speech. "This turnaround represents more than financial recovery," he said, standing at the podium beneath those massive screens. It represents our evolution into a modern, agile manufacturing organization ready for the challenges of the next decade. He talked about innovation, about embracing change, about the importance of fresh perspectives in rapidly evolving markets. Standard corporate speaking points that meant nothing and everything. Which brings me to an exciting announcement about our operational leadership going forward. That's when my stomach dropped. Not the words exactly, but the tone. The way he glanced toward the back of the room where his son Bryce stood, looking unusually serious for a 29-year-old who'd spent most of the past 8 months in meetings learning what a supply chain actually was. As we transition into our next phase of aggressive expansion, we need leadership that understands the digital transformation vision I've been building toward. Someone who can bridge traditional manufacturing excellence with cutting-edge technological innovation. More corporate speak. More setup for what everyone in that room was starting to understand. Which is why I'm proud to announce that Bryce Hartwell will be stepping into the role of Chief Operations Officer, effective immediately. The applause was enthusiastic this time. Real energy, not just politeness. Bryce walked to the stage, shook his father's hand for exactly the right amount of time while photographers captured the moment. His expression was perfectly calibrated, humble but confident, grateful for the opportunity, ready to serve. I stood in the back corner near the people who actually made things work. Plant managers who'd spent months learning my systems. Maintenance. Supervisors who understood why predictive protocols mattered. Quality coordinators who'd helped implement processes that actually prevented defects instead of just catching them after the fact. Nobody looked at me directly, but I could feel the tension. These people understood what had just happened, even if they couldn't say it out loud. Bryce brings fresh perspective and innovative thinking, Richard continued. His Harvard MBA background, combined with his deep understanding of our family values and long-term vision, positions us perfectly for the challenges ahead. Fresh perspective. 8 months of attending meetings and asking basic questions about manufacturing processes was apparently deep understanding. I didn't wait for the speech to end. While Richard talked about legacy and vision, and the importance of family leadership in business, I walked out of the ballroom, down the corridor lined with corporate achievement awards, past the executive wing with its thick carpets and original artwork. Nobody stopped me. Nobody called my name. All attention was focused on the stage, on Bryce, on the future they'd just announced. Richard's office was empty when I reached the executive floor, but I knew he'd be up shortly. Company celebrations always ended with him retreating to review what went well and plan next steps. Old habit from his army days, he'd told me once, after action reviews were critical for continuous improvement. I sat in the leather chair across from his desk and waited. He appeared 20 minutes later, looking satisfied with himself, still wearing his tuxedo from the event, bow tie loosened, small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The kind of expression you get when you've successfully executed a complex plan. "Mac," he said, genuinely surprised to find me there. "Hell of a night, wasn't it? You should be proud. The turnaround you executed was exactly what we needed." He moved to his desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a small gift box. Navy, blue with the company logo embossed in gold, set it on the desktop between us. "You delivered exceptional results," Richard said, settling into his executive chair. "But operations and leadership are different skill sets. Bryce has the background for where we're going next." Background. I repeated the word slowly. He has an MBA from a school his family donated a library to. I have 28 years of operational experience across 6 industries, plus military logistics training. I just pulled your company back from the edge of bankruptcy. Richard opened the gift box and slid it across the polished desktop. Inside were 4 golf balls with the Hartwell Manufacturing logo. Probably cost $15 for the set. "Take some time off, Mac," he said, gesturing at the box like it was generous. "You've been running hard all year. Go relax, play some golf. You've earned it." For several seconds, the only sound was the distant music from the ballroom celebration and the quiet hum of the building's HVAC system. I looked at those golf balls. $15. About what I'd spent on coffee during one of my 18-hour days restructuring their catastrophic vendor management system. I didn't raise my voice, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. I slid the golf balls into my jacket pocket. "Thank you," I said. His eyebrows lifted slightly. "That's it?" "That's it." I walked out of his office, through the executive wing, down the elevator, out into the November cold, where my breath formed clouds in the air. Richard thought that was the end of it, that I'd accepted his valuation of my work, my year, my future. What he didn't understand was that at 9 a.m. the next morning, Hartwell Manufacturing would discover that the systems keeping them operational weren't actually theirs, and the consulting fees were about to change dramatically. I drove to my office and opened the administrative console that only I had access to. Hartwell's engagement status showed active renewal in 19 days, support contract, valid through next year. Below that were 3 options invisible to anyone at Hartwell. Modify engagement status, enable restricted access mode, terminate engagement. I didn't terminate. This wasn't about destruction. This was about correction. I clicked Modify Status. The system prompted, "Material change to operational authority without prior agreement?" Yes. Initiate restricted access transition? Yes. Delay before restricted mode activates? I selected 24 hours, 1 business day to call me and have an actual conversation about operational authority and contractual obligations. If nobody reached out, they'd learn what restricted access meant. They discovered it at 9:07 the next morning. Vendor management system showed read-only access. Maintenance scheduling protocols were frozen. The safety compliance database had locked down. No new certifications could be generated. Predictive maintenance reports weren't updating. My phone rang at 9:04, Richard's direct line. "Mac, we have a problem. The systems aren't updating." "Systems are fine," I said calmly. Engagement transitioned to restricted mode at 9 a.m., exactly as specified in our agreement. "What agreement?" Sullivan Industrial Systems Consulting Contract, Section 7, Material Change Clause. "You announced yesterday that operational leadership was transferring to someone else without consulting me or modifying our arrangement. That was an internal promotion, not a contract issue. That was operational authority being reassigned without written agreement. The distinction matters legally." In the background, I heard voices. Someone saying vendor systems were locked. Someone else reporting that safety certifications couldn't be renewed. "How long to fix this?" Richard demanded. "Depends what you mean by fix," I said. "Restore full access?" 45 minutes once we have a signed amendment. Replace everything so you don't need me? 2 to 3 years, assuming you find qualified consultants and don't lose half your institutional knowledge. When frustrated employees quit during the transition. Silence on the other end. "I'll be in at 2 p.m. Have your lawyer present." The conference room was packed when I arrived. Richard, Bryce, CFO Jordan Walsh, General Counsel, 2 board members. Speakerphone glowing with Linda Martinez dialed in from Chicago. I pulled out those golf balls and placed them in the center of the table. "What are those?" Bryce asked, looking annoyed. "Your father's assessment of what my work was worth," I said. "Today we're discussing what it actually costs to operate without me." "Mac," Linda's voice came through the speaker. "We understand you're upset about organizational changes, but this seems disproportionate. I'm not upset. I'm enforcing contract terms your legal team approved. The only thing that changed is yesterday you all assumed I'd never actually use the protections I built into that contract. What are our options? Jordan asked quietly. Option 1. Proceed as planned. You treat this as a temporary technical issue. In 19 days, when renewal comes due, I don't renew. Systems disconnect completely. You rebuild from scratch. We'll have replacements operational in 6 months, Bryce said confidently. I looked at him directly. You don't know where our safety certifications are registered, much less how vendor relationships actually work. This isn't just software. And with you? Linda asked. Full restoration in 45 minutes once we have a signed amendment. What terms? 3-year contract at market rates, $520,000 annually instead of the $180,000 discount rate. Explicit operational authority clause requiring my written consent for any leadership changes affecting system oversight. Internal acknowledgement that these are business-critical systems requiring ongoing professional management. Richard stared at those golf balls. One of the board members picked them up, examining them like evidence. You want us to admit we made a mistake, Richard said finally. I want you to acknowledge reality. Frame it however you want. They signed at 4:43 p.m. I restored full access at 5:15. The company exhaled. I framed those golf balls and hung them in my office, not as a trophy, as a reminder that when someone hands you $15 golf balls after you save their company, they're telling you exactly what they think you're worth. The real lesson? Your value isn't determined by your title or position on an org chart. It's determined by what stops working when you're not there. And if you're smart enough to protect yourself before becoming indispensable, age becomes your advantage, not your liability. That's a lesson every professional over 50 needs to understand. Your decades of experience aren't just history, they're currency. And when you know how to spend that currency wisely, nobody replaces you with family connections and expects you to smile about it.